Good morning. Thank you for being with us. The question is, what is being done to ensure there's enough housing in our state? The governor has proposed spending $600 million over the next 2 years to increase housing all across the board. Joining me this morning is Connecticut's Housing Commissioner, Seila Mosquera-Bruno. Commissioner, welcome. Thank you for being with us.
Eric, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
In the intro, in the headlines to this show, we called it a housing crisis. Do you think that's a fair description of what's happening in the state of Connecticut?
Unfortunately, it is not only on the state of Connecticut, but also across the country. The need for housing, all type of housing, whether it's rental or homeownership, we don't have enough supply, the bottom line.
And so what does that lead to? That leads, obviously, the supply is necessary because there's people who need to take advantage of it. So then there's a trickle of other factors?
Of course. The inflation, so income and disparity has not kept up with inflation. Rents are very high. So what we are doing is trying to build more housing, providing resources so that we keep building housing. As I said, all type of housing.
All right, so let's talk about some of the things the state can do, because this is something the governor's talked a lot about. He's talked to us a lot about it when he's been on the show. And you're the person charged with carrying it out. So tell me, what can the state do to help that problem, and what is the state doing?
So it's not just one thing that we have to do, right? We have to do multiple things. Building housing for families that are minimum wages families, right? I have a father that is retired, and he's making $2,200 a month, right? So how much he can afford? He can afford a $1,500 apartment. He can probably afford an $800 apartment. We are building housing that provides a subsidy to the developer so that the rents can be lower. We also are providing resources for those people that want to join the dream of being homeowners. We have the governor put into the budget $150 million for first-time home buyers. So it's a forgivable loan, down payment assistance up to $50,000, depending on where they want to buy. So we have so far in a year and a half 2,800 households that became homeowners for the first time. So we are doing all the type of elements that you can cover, helping with rent. We also provide rental assistance to family and individuals.
Let me just say first, I said this to the governor, other than a half hour a week here, I'm a lawyer and I do a lot of real estate closings, and the down payment assistance is like the most popular program I've ever seen. And if you're a first-time home buyer, go look it up, because it really is. People go crazy for it. The other thing that you talked about is, building affordable housing, building units that people can afford. But then we see a proposal comes up somewhere and people start saying, not the appropriate neighborhood, don't want it here, don't want it in our town. That's been a big battle. So what can the state do? I don't want to say to force municipalities to take this on, but it's got to be built somewhere. So how do you find that balance? So
we're doing a lot of education. Listen, sometimes it's the knowledge of what is coming, and people get afraid, unknown things. So what we're doing is educating. We're providing technical assistance to towns. We're providing resources to the towns, working together, because this is not just the governor. This is not just the Department of Housing. This is all of us. All of us are in this together, so we all have to work together toward developing more housing and being able to offer those resources to our community.
Is there also an education piece of it? Because I know in talking to people who do some of the development, there's maybe a misnomer by saying housing is affordable, that it is going to be some kind of tenement, to use an old-fashioned word, type housing. And when you look at some of the numbers, what affordability really means, it's really blue-collar, maybe even middle-class, hard-working folks who would be living there, right? Is there an element of your job that you have to say, hey, this is what this really means?
It is. We have to do education. We have to work with communities, because at the end of the day, you want to go to a restaurant, right? You want to have your dinner. Well, who are the people working there? If they're good enough to provide you with your food, they should be good enough to be living in our communities next to us.
We only have 2 minutes left, and I want to get to two other things. The CT Build program, you said, is something that's very important. Tell us about that.
Build for CT is a new program to develop and to attract the private markets, the private developers, to provide some of those market rate units for middle-income workforce housing. Those individuals that are making between $70,000 to $120,000 but don't have apartments. So their rents will come down. What we're providing is through CHAFA, a loan at very low interest rate. so that they can really move those programs along.
And the other thing is, you're one of the agencies involved in the Interagency Council on Homelessness, and the governor said he wanted to uplift the voices of those closest to the problem. What's your work on that involving, and what can you do to help with homelessness?
It's basically we are looking at the whole system and looking at gaps, and also bringing our agencies, all the other agencies that provide services and have resources, so that we can look at any individual issues in a holistic approach.
And is it something that you hope to, again, find more supply, find more places for folks? Is that part of the challenge?
So part of the challenge is that we do have resources, and sometimes we don't use it effectively. So that's one of the challenges. Also, we're trying to make sure that we coordinate efforts, that if you as an individual has 3 agencies working with you, so we're going to know instead of going one-on-one.
I think you said in a lot of these things, education is an important piece of it. We're just about out of time. Can they go on the Department of Housing website to find out more? Because there's so much to some of these programs.
Yes,
that would be a good place to look.
Website. Yes,
because
absolutely.
Whether it's first-time home buyer or some of the affordability programs, these are things that people might see this today and want to find out more. Go on the website.
And developers, come to us. We're here to help.
All right, appreciate it. Commissioner Seila Mosquera-Bruno, thank you for being with us here on CT24.
Thank you for having me.